Hey there, Jake here from CVP. Today we are going to take a look at a new Sony Cinema Line camera. And it's kind of like if you took an FX3 and an A7C II and smashed them together. This is the FX2, and it has a few new things that the FX30 and even the FX3 don't have. But can it compete with the massive range of other video focus cameras to choose from in 2025? Well, let's take a look. Before we get into the details of the FX2, let's talk about its price. It's going to cost £2,700 for the body-only version and £3,150 if you want the XLR top handle. That makes it about £450 less than the FX3 and about £550 more than the A7 IV, and it actually shares quite a lot with both of these cameras. For our creative examples we've shot with the FX2, the video clips have all been shot using S-Log3 S-Gamma3.Cine, with them then being coloured through Resolve or Premiere. All of the stills are JPEGs using a Codec Gold picture profile setup with small tweaks through Lightroom. We only had the camera for a couple of days, but we did manage to take it down to a local beach and out on a shoot to a local ceramic artist, Matt Smith, to document a couple of his classes and a bit about his process.
I've been teaching some of my students now for the last 5-6 years. I feel like we become friends and, it's part of the family here. So on a Thursday morning, for instance, the same group of ladies have been coming here for years. What is nice, aside from the teaching, in that scenario is that they've got something to look forward to. Pottery brings them together, yes, but they are here predominantly to talk, chat and socialise, drink tea, coffee, biscuits, and have a great time. It also gives moments for people to just concentrate on one thing. It takes a lot of concentration in order to be able to throw. So therefore they can sit on that wheel for 2 hours and forget everything else in life that's maybe a bother or a pain to them and forget about it.
Unsurprisingly, the FX2 produces very nice, natural, clean images. We've not shot too much with the Sony a7 IV sensor cameras, but I remember taking the A7C II to the Lockswood Joust when we reviewed it and the Cooke SP3s, and the image that this sensor can capture is nice. The image is clean, colours look nice and natural, and dynamic range looks solid. When on location in the pottery studio, the camera didn't skip a beat, and the new viewfinder made shooting with it a bit different, as you can reorientate it unlike a regular Alpha Series camera. Anyway, let us know what you think of the images down below. The FX2 features a 33 megapixel full frame back illuminated Exmor-R CMOS sensor with a resolution of 7008 by 4672, a size of 35.6 by 23.8mm, which gives it a rough pixel pitch size of 5.12 microns. Those of you familiar with the A7 IV and A7C II may already be thinking that sounds pretty much identical to the sensor used in those cameras, and you would be correct. However, the FX2 features Sony's latest Bionz XR processor and AI processing unit as well. The sensor in the A7 IV and A7C II is pretty well regarded by photographers, videographers, and especially hybrid shooters. This is because you can capture nice detailed stills and then 4K video, which when shooting at regular base frame rates is downsampling roughly 7K or 7008 by 3944's worth of the sensor. You then also have the ability to crop into a 4K Super 35 mode, which you can shoot up to 60 frames per second in, and this again is downsampled but from 4.8K's worth of the sensor, which means shooting in this mode can still deliver really nice detailed imagery. You can also assign this to a custom button, which allows you to quickly add a 1.5 times crop if you need that extra zoom in a pinch. The FX2 features a dual base ISO of 800 and 4000 with an S-Log3 S-Gamma3.Cine. Surprisingly, this is actually a little bit different to the A7 IV and A7C II, which has a low base of 800 and high of 3200. Comparing the low light performance against the FX3, we can see that the FX2 performs surprisingly well. Even at 12800 ISO, they're pretty close. The FX2 does look to have more lumen noise present, but I think it's got more detail than the FX3 clip. They both perform very well here though. Sony has stated that you can capture 15 plus stops of dynamic range, but let's run it through our regular Latitude testing and see how it performs. For these tests, we had a few cameras we wanted to put the FX2 up against: the FX3, A7C II, FX30, and Panasonic S1 II, which was also recently released. We used our trusty Zeiss Otus 55mm f1.4 with a Metabone Cine adapter for the E-mount cameras, and then a Sigma MC21 for the S1 II. Here's a breakdown of our methodology for these tests and the different formats we shot across the different cameras. We've shot internally compressed formats across each camera to make it a bit more equal, but the S1 II can shoot more robust formats than we did. So if you want to see how that camera performs in RAW, check out our recent review of it. Anyway, let's take a look at the results. For our overexposure testing, we shot all of the cameras at their low base ISOs, and with the S1 II, we shot with its dynamic range boost mode on and off. Starting with the FX2, we can see our image is good up until around 3 stops over. At 4 stops over, we can see the white chip on our chart clipping, and then from here we can see Sam's skin start to break more and more. Comparing it to the rest of the Sony cameras, they're pretty close. The A7C2 looks pretty much identical. The FX30 seems to clip the fastest and colour-wise looks the odd one out, and I would say the FX3 edges it out ever so slightly as the best performer here. Looking at the S1 II, it's no question that it performs best here. Even with boost mode off at 4 to 5 stops, it looks really good, with much more highlight detail being retained. And with boost mode on, it performs even better. It really is impressive what Panasonic have managed to achieve with the S1 II, but it's a different story with the underexposure tests. For these tests, we shot all of the cameras at their low and high base ISOs. As we go through the range on the FX2, we can see quite a bit of noise creeping in at about 3 stops under. From here we can see this increase, but there is minimal colour shifting, and a good amount of detail still present. Performance is similar across the low and high base modes. Compared to the other Sony cameras, the A7C2 performs pretty much exactly the same, though weirdly the base ISO is slightly higher on the FX2 at 4000 versus the 3200 of the A7C2. But they do look very similar across these tests. The FX3 has less overall lumen noise, but there is still chroma present throughout the test. I think the FX3's colour is a touch better than the FX2 here, but there is CMOS smearing present with the FX3, which the FX2 doesn't show. The FX30 performs the worst with the most shifted colour and heavy noise pattern. The Panasonic S1 II shifts more green than the purple of the Sony cameras, and towards the darker stops it looks really green. Up until 4 stops under, it looks really good. There is colour present on our chart, and detail overall, it looks really decent. I think the overall shifts are far more substantial past this though compared to the Sony cameras. We'll be uploading our tests uncut on our Vimeo as soon as possible. Link to follow us over there is in the description. Let's talk about the camera's sensor readout speed. The sensor used in the A7 IV and A7C2 is known for being quite slow for video, so let's take a look at how the FX2 fares. For these controlled tests, we are using our own in-house measuring tool and software so we can give you some exact numbers and compare them to other cameras we've measured before. In the camera's 4K full frame mode, we got a result of roughly 27.38 milliseconds. When you drop it into the Full HD full frame mode, you get a much lower 9.16 milliseconds, which must mean that some kind of pixel binning or line skipping is happening when in this mode. If we look at our chart testing comparing 4K and Full HD in the full frame mode, we can see a pretty heavy loss in detail, which confirms that something is going on to achieve this speed. If you window into the Super 35 mode, you get around 12.8 milliseconds in both 4K and Full HD. Looking at CineD's numbers, these seem similar to what you should expect on the A7 IV and A7C2. Compared to some other options on the market now, these numbers are quite slow, but whether it's acceptable for you or not depends on what you need from a camera. If you want a much faster readout Sony camera, I would suggest grabbing the FX3. Up next, let's check out how this camera handles infrared light pollution. For these tests, we grabbed a range of different black fabrics as different types will behave differently to each other, and then blasted an Ari blonde at them. We then went through the range of our Polar Pro variable ND, adjusting aperture on our lens to keep exposure consistent. This is an unnamed camera with its OIPF removed as an extreme example of what IR pollution can do to your image. With no ND, our different black fabrics all look very good. When we put the ND on, we can see a slight warm shift, but no pinky purple pollution, which is good. This is great to see, and we haven't experienced any infrared pollution issues when out on location either, so you shouldn't run into any issues yourself. The FX2 can record in a range of formats and codecs, very similar to existing FX series cameras. This includes a range of intra and long GOP compressed versions in a range of 420 8-bit and 42 10-bit options. You can also shoot with H.265 compression, but this is limited to 50 or 60p weirdly, unless you go into the FPS menu where you can shoot at 25p but at 50p base. So your footage is double speed until you normalize it back to 25p in post. It's really frustrating. You can also shoot DCI 4K, though this is limited to a 24p base. It's good to have a mix, but there isn't an overwhelming amount to choose from, and compared to other cameras from their competitors now, I do think Sony is missing some higher quality formats like ProRes or internal compressed RAW, which I would love to see in an FX series camera. The FX2 also has a full-size HDMI port which can output 16-bit RAW externally to compatible recorders, though this is limited to the Super 35 mode only. The FX2 has a range of picture profiles to choose from. This includes Sony's standard S-Log3 S-Gamma3.Cine, S-Cinetone, and two new creative film profiles, FL2 and FL3, which look like this. You can also load in your own LUTs, which you can burn straight into your rushes. It's good that you have a range of quick deliverable profiles and S-Log3 if you want to colour your footage in post. Looking at our creative testing, I think the colour from the FX2 looks really nice. Even with a quick 709-ish LUT and telemetry tweaks in Premiere, it looks really nice and natural. In the menu of the FX2, you can change between 3 different log shooting modes. Cine EI is a feature that has trickled down from Sony's higher end cameras. EI stands for exposure index, and if you change this, the increased brightness you see in your viewfinder will not be recorded. Cine EI Quick will automatically choose the best base ISO for you, whereas the Cine EI mode, you must switch between the 2 different bases. Flexible ISO is a similar shooting experience to shooting S-Log3 on a previous camera without Cine EI. You can adjust your exposure levels with ISO at any value with the camera switching its base mode as it sees fit. This will be the most commonly used setting where you don't mind having varied noise levels as you go between different ISOs. Unsurprisingly, the FX2 features the same excellent zebra function for exposure as the previous FX cameras do, but I do wish we had some other exposure tools like a waveform or false colour. With it sharing similar sensor architecture to the A7 IV and A7C II, it's not surprising that the FX2 shoots similar resolution and frame rate combinations. When using the full field of view of the sensor, you can shoot 4K up to 30 and Full HD up to 120 frames per second. When you go into the Super 35 crop mode, you can shoot 4K up to 60 frames per second. Thanks to the camera downsampling in both of the sensor modes, the 4K footage does look good, but there is a slight reduction in detail when you window in, but that's to be expected. However, the results still look good, though the Full HD slow-mo is a little soft compared to what you would expect from a camera like the FX3, for example. When it comes to autofocus, the FX2 features a similar specification to the A7C II. It has 759 phase detect points in its stills mode, but 627 points active in its video mode, which is actually more than the A7 IV and A7C II in their video modes. It also has the AI processing chip that has been used in a few of Sony's previous cameras. This means that it should have an improved system versus the A7 IV and at least on par with the A7C II. You can control all the regular parameters that have been present in previous Sony cameras, which makes it really customizable and controllable. In our regular autofocus testing and throughout our creative shoots, it performed really well. It recognises subjects in the frame fast thanks to the AI chip and is very good at tracking a range of different subjects. The camera also has an auto subject switching mode, which switches between the different targets the camera can detect, without you needing to switch in the menu. It works really well, but that's not surprising. Sony's autofocus is fantastic, and that's still the case with the FX2. When it comes to stabilisation, the FX2 features similar levels to the rest of the Sony FX series of cameras, which is 5.5 stops in the centre of frame and 5 stops in the periphery. You can completely toggle stabilisation off in the menu. You then have standard stabilisation, active and dynamic active modes. These active modes crop in on your image to provide even more stabilisation power, and dynamic mode is one of the new ones that Sony have been bringing to a few of their cameras. It's been designed for filming while walking and running in more extreme scenarios. This is how much it crops in versus the other modes, but how does it actually look? These shots are just me walking across the different modes. You can see how they change the feel of the image as we go between them. We can see that dynamic active can produce smooth movement, especially when compared to the regular stabilisation. But of course you are losing quite a bit of field of view, and you can see some jumping sometimes, which is pretty common with digital stabilising systems. As with other FX cameras, the FX2 also saves the gyro data when you're shooting into your clips, which you can then use in Sony's Catalyst browse to stabilise your clips using that if you'd rather. If you want to keep up with the latest and greatest kit, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to buy anything you see in this video, you want to get your hands on the FX2 or any other kit for that matter, head over to cvp.com where our experienced team is waiting to help you. The FX2 is certainly designed as you would expect a camera in the FX series to be. It's got a similar overall design to the FX3, is dust and moisture resistant, but does have some physical changes over the FX3. First off, it's the same width and height but thicker than the FX3. The grip is incredibly large on this camera, which does make it very nice to shoot handheld with. It also has a range of mounting threads across its body, but less than the FX3 does. One nice touch is that it has 2 1/4-inch threads on the bottom of the camera. This means you can attach a plate onto the bottom for a gimbal or tripod, for example, and not have to worry about the plate loosening over time and spinning on a single thread. Without the top handle, it weighs just 679 grams, which is a little bit lighter than the FX3. Not that the FX3 is a heavy camera by any means. Next to the nice power on-off switch, you also have a new mode switch to quickly go between the camera's stills and movie mode. The switch between the two different modes is instant, which makes shooting a hybrid of photo and video on a single shoot really fast. Pair this with the camera separating your video and photo settings out between the two different modes. It means you can really switch between shooting high quality video and stills very quickly without worrying you're capturing crunchy photo profile video or S-Log pictures. The positioning of buttons has changed from the FX3 slightly to accommodate the viewfinder on the back. Just like the FX3, the joystick is on the top of the camera and not on the back, which I personally find a bit frustrating when taking stills. Otherwise, the camera is laid out nicely though, and it's nice to use, especially when shooting video. With these subtle changes, I think existing FX3 cages on the most part won't work, but some might, and I'm sure all of the regular rigging manufacturers will be making accessories for the FX2 very soon. The positioning of the inputs and outputs has also changed on the left-hand side of the camera, and so have the doors that cover them up. You have the HDMI at the top, a new M3 thread, and then the USB-C and micro port. Under that you have a 3.5mm headphone port and mic jack, which aren't covered, but I think they are positioned well. Just be careful when rotating the screen with headphones plugged in. One of the biggest differences between the FX2 and the rest of the smaller FX series cameras is the new built-in tiltable viewfinder. The viewfinder has a resolution of approximately 3.68 million dots, and to use, it's actually really nice. It's definitely more akin to the A7 IV's viewfinder than the smaller, lower resolution one in the A7C2. It's also tiltable from flush to the body in a regular position to straight up, which completely changes the way you can use it for video and stills. You can view it far easier than a traditional fixed viewfinder on a mirrorless camera, especially when shooting video. You can also remove the eye cup and rotate it depending on what eye you preferably want to use. This is a really nice addition to the camera, and I think a lot of people will find it very helpful in loads of different shooting environments. There is also a button on the side of the viewfinder. You can rebind this or have it set to toggle between monitor or viewfinder. When using the XLR top handle and the viewfinder at the same time, especially when it's more pointed up, we found it can be a little bit tricky to use sometimes. The FX2 also has a 3-inch, roughly 1.03 million dot LCD, which can be flipped out and rotated. I would have personally preferred a tiltable and also flippable display here. This looks similar to the screen used on the A7C2, and it's certainly not quite as good as the ones you'll find on the FX30 or FX3. On a camera this expensive, I would have really liked to have seen a higher resolution monitor here. Just like the FX30, the FX2 is available body only or bundled with the same XLR top handle that you'll find with the FX30 and FX3. This works out to be around £450 extra on top of the body only price. But if you go body only and then decide to grab one after, they cost just under £680. For super lightweight rigs, this default top handle configuration will be really great. It connects to the top of the camera via two 1/4-inch threads and then the MI shoe. We recorded our interview for our creative test through this top handle using Sennheiser's EWD set of wireless mics, and the sounds come out pretty great. The camera also has a scratch mic built in, as well as a 3.5mm mic in and headphone output on the side of the body, which could be very handy when you have the camera on a gimbal but still want an audio source going in. These have actually changed position slightly compared to the FX3. They are now lower on the body, which I think is a better place for them. You can also capture 4 channels of audio and monitor them all now as well. As with the FX3 and 30, you can jam timecode via USB with the VMC BNC M1 adapter cable, which means you can keep a channel of audio free. The FX2 uses the MPF-Z100 battery, which has been used across loads of Sony's modern mirrorless cameras. There are plenty of decent first and third party options, and they are readily available thanks to how many cameras now use it. There are also plenty of options for powering the camera externally. This can be done by using a good quality dummy battery adapter cable or via USB-C, which can charge the battery inside the camera when it's off or be run off while being on. When powering via USB-C, a battery must be inserted into the camera. During my first day with the camera using it casually, I shot just under 1,000 images and the battery only went down to 50%. During our creative shoot, I only had to change the battery once on the FX2 and we shot from around 10 AM till 5 PM. So battery life is pretty decent. The BTZD1. This is a really compact dual channel charger that can charge 2 batteries at the same time fully in just 155 minutes. It uses USB-C power delivery, meaning you can use common cables and chargers for other USB-C devices. However, charging 2 batteries simultaneously requires at least 30 watts, and a single channel requires 18 watts. and in both cases the cable needs to be able to handle at least 3 amps, but there are plenty of options available that will cover this easily. This is such a great change from the standard charger that comes with Sony cameras, and can be bought separately if you want to grab another one with your FX2 or upgrade your charger in your existing Sony kit. The smaller FX series cameras feature robust cooling solutions compared to the Alpha series of cameras. This is thanks to the addition of a fan and better intakes and exhausts for air. This means you have a much lower chance of running into overheating issues, whereas you may with Alpha series cameras like the A7 IV or A7C II. You can control how the fan behaves in the menu and even toggle an extended heat limit. It also doesn't have any artificial recording limits. You will only really be limited by your recording media size and battery. During our time shooting with the camera across all of our control testing and creative shoots, we didn't run into any issues with overheating at all. On our creative shoot, we had the A7C II as a BTS and a B camera, and that camera did get hotter to the touch than the FX2, but it still didn't overheat to the point where we couldn't use it. Similar to the A7 IV, the FX2 has a dual card slot, but one can take CF Express Type A or SD UHS-2 cards, whereas the other is just limited to SD. In the menu, you can choose how you want to write to these different slots. During our time shooting with the FX2, we mainly had video set to slot A to a CF Express Type A card, and then photos to slot B to an SD card. But you can define how this behaves even further. You can shoot to both cards simultaneously or automatically switch between the cards as you fill them up. The FX2 has a few new features that we haven't seen in previous small FX series cameras. First off is the addition of the Big 6 menu, which can be found on cameras like the FX6, 9 and Venice. You can view this by hitting the home button, which allows you to cycle between the different monitoring modes. This breaks down your key shooting parameters into the same layout as much higher end cinema cameras. The UI also now rotates when you are using the camera vertically. This also rotates the quick monitoring menus, but as soon as you go into the full deeper menu, this doesn't rotate, which is a bit of a shame. There is also now an FPS tab which allows you to switch between variable and fixed frame rates. This is essentially your slow and quick mode. It allows you to go above and below your base frame rate and automatically conforms it to your chosen base. Otherwise, it has a bunch of existing features from other FX cameras running up to date firmware, like the ability to use shutter angle or speed, auto framing and framing stabilizer, which could be helpful for some solo operators, 1.3 and 2 times D-squeeze for anamorphic lenses, and it is UVC and UAC compliant, so you can easily use it as a webcam or get it into OBS via USB. Though clearly more focused on video shooting, the FX2 is still a competent stills camera. It has a physical shutter mechanism and can shoot up to 10 frames per second continuously when using it. The A7 IV and A7C II are well respected stills cameras, so it's great to have all of that spec crammed into the FX2 when you need to use it as a stills camera. And the EVF makes it really nice to take stills on. We managed to capture a range of images on the FX2 and the stills look great. They are detailed, have nice colour and solid dynamic range. I couldn't get the RAWs into Lightroom and I wish I could, but that's always the case when reviewing cameras before they release. The FX2 also has a new log shooting setting when in the stills mode. This allows you to shoot in S-Log3 if you want to capture your stills and then process them with your own specific LUT or colour workflow where you can use log. This could be helpful if you want to process an S-Log3 image through Resolve to generate a LUT or look. The FX2 is a great camera that can capture some really nice images, and it is a joy to use with its viewfinder and typical Sony operation. But given how feature rich their competitors' options have become, I did expect some larger additions or improvements. The FX2 is priced at £2,700 for the body only and $3,150 if you want the XLR top handle. That positions it with some pretty interesting competitors. Comparing it to cameras in Sony's lineup, you have the A7C II, A7 IV and FX3, which are positioned like this price-wise. The A7 IV and A7C II share similar sensor technology and features to the FX2, apart from a few of the larger changes of the FX2 and a couple of smaller features. Choosing between them really comes down to what you shoot and overall usability. The A7 IV is your traditional alpha hybrid, the A7C II is a compact alternative with a few modern Sony updates, and the FX2 is your cinema line option. The FX3 has maybe slightly less detailed imagery, but gains a few things including improved high frame rate options, a higher second base ISO, a much faster readout speed sensor, and the prestige of it being an FX3. Compared to other brands, Canon have the C70, which is now just a couple of £100 extra than the FX2 with the top handle, and the R5C. You also have Nikon's Z series, Blackmagic's Pixis, cinema and pocket cameras, and Panasonic's new S series cameras, specifically the S1 II. These all outspec this camera in quite a few ways. They all offer more robust internal recording options, including compressed RAW, better frame rate options for the most part. Some have 3x2 open gate modes, which for modern day video work is incredibly helpful for multiple format delivery. And they offer more video features, which Sony still haven't added to their more affordable end of the cinema line system, like false color and waveforms. But Sony is still the dominant name within the video focus space, which I think is for a few key reasons. Their excellent range of first and third party lenses, which loads of people have invested into, incredibly reliable and intuitive autofocus system, simple range of internal formats, universal color profiles and log workflow, the recognition factor, which I know is annoying, but it is a thing, and buying a certain camera can get you certain work another one may not. And lastly, their clear upgrade and progression path. Sony have unified their cameras to make it easy for someone to come in at a low level like an A6700 and then progress up to something like an FX6. And you know your media, lenses and menu and operation skills will carry over. With it also not being easy to adapt to mirrorless mount lenses like it was back in the EF days, switching brands is a serious commitment now, especially for working professionals. The FX2 takes the pretty well regarded performance of the Sony A7 IV and A7C II and crams it into an FX3 style body, and sprinkles a few new features like the viewfinder, portrait monitoring screen and new dynamic active mode stabilisation on top. It's a fantastic camera to use that can produce a very good reliable image in a body which is pretty easy to shoot video with now, while also being a pretty decent stills camera as well. But is it the right camera for you? Well, that will depend on what you need, and we can help you choose the right camera and create the perfect package for your needs. If you want to come in and test this camera out for yourself, you can book an appointment at our UK and European showrooms, where you can get your hands on and test a range of cameras, rig them up, and check out some lenses with one of our knowledgeable technical consultants. If you want to book an appointment today, drop demo@cvp.com and email. Anyway, let us know if you have any other questions about the FX2 in the comments below. And if you like the video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our awesome upcoming content. Thank you so much for watching.